Hello everybody, if you've done any Race C this week, then you know that just getting around T1 can be nearly impossible. I, for one, love Super Formula cars. I love Super Formulas at Suzuka, so I knew that this was going to be a lot of fun, as long as we could survive. Like many streamers, I have a lot of fun racing from the back, because not a lot of the competitive people do the daily races, so in order to get a real good race, I like to just not set a quali and see what I can do from the back. This presents a unique challenge with this kind of start. We've got a standing start with Super Formula cars, and I was just relegated to the second split because I couldn't avoid carnage. So avoiding carnage is the name of the game today. As you can see, I got pretty lucky, but I've also learned from doing this combination many times that if you just hold the inside, most people are going to go a little bit too fast, collide, and then just fly off track. You also see a lot of penalties because, of course, it's really hard to avoid anyone, especially if you're being really aggressive, and this chestnut guy was pretty aggressive at the start. I'm not sure he deserved 5 seconds, but anyways, it happened. Don't necessarily trust people that I don't know very well, and we also have Degner 1 and 2, which, as you can see, usually provides a few extra spots. We're definitely still not out of the danger yet because we've got the hairpin coming up, and to my surprise, it was super clean. You never really know what tires people are on. It makes a lot of sense at first to use the softer tires if you're starting from the front, but it's also kind of a shady strategy, but we do it anyways. You can start from the harder compound at front, and then if people are in a softer compound behind you, you just let them waste their tires while trying to pass you. I mean, it's a legitimate strat. You never really know what tires people are on. So just assuming people could be on a softer tire, I just drove as fast as I could, and I was able to catch up to P6 and take that pretty quickly. I don't personally know the guy that I just passed, but I do know that I can trust K well, so I didn't worry too much about putting a pass on him. This guy J Mara, though, I wasn't even trying to pass him. I was 100% just trying to brake behind him, and I was going to take my time, but luckily he braked really early, and he moved over to the middle, so it just kind of happened. I swear I didn't even try. One thing that was super exciting to me was to find out that the dirty air seems to be fixed. I don't know if it's actually been fixed or if it just doesn't seem as bad anymore because we're at Suzuka or maybe the tire compounds, but either way, it's been pretty easy to follow people, which has been both good and bad. Good because, of course, we can come up and try to make moves on people anywhere, but that also means that the same thing can happen to you. So now we're up 9 positions. We're 2 seconds away from the lead after starting in 13th place. And I've raced against ISO. I don't think I know them very well, but I did think I could trust them, so I was just going to wait until I can put on a nice clean move, and then we would go from there. The hairpin's one of my favorite places to try to make a move. I don't usually go for the move directly at the hairpin, but I like getting a completely different angle and then trying to use the better acceleration, maybe a little bit of boost, to try to get them on the next corner. I've spent a lot of time doing toge competitions, and if you're not familiar with that, it's essentially like mountain passes, like initial D kind of stuff. So, hairpins are my favorite. As I said earlier, I did think I could trust ISO, so I went on the outside, and I don't think he really meant to push me there. I think it's just really difficult to stay clean in that section. It wasn't too bad. We still had a lot of time left, and I got a lot of boost, so we're going to try on the outside again. Luckily, these cars can really easily go full throttle on 130R, so I figured even if we were still next to each other, it would be fine, but I did get in front, took a defensive line, and that was that. So after making that move, I felt pretty comfortable that I'd be able to stay in front. I was just going to take the inside and brake as late as I possibly could if he was going to go for a move, and then I could focus on trying to attack TCR, Blu-ray, and One Clever Name. You can always trust a TCR acronym, but I wasn't quite sure if I could trust One Clever Name just because I don't know. It's not that I distrust them in any way, it's just that if I don't know, then I'm automatically going to be cautious. I did, however, feel immediately comfortable seeing that Blu-ray was able to pass One Clever Name, and there was no kind of shenanigans going on there, so I figured if I passed One Clever Name, then I would be fine too. Until I saw that. So even with that, I didn't think it was necessarily intentional. It just looked like he made a mistake and then bounced off the curb and hit Blu-ray, but even with that, I knew I should be a little bit more cautious than average with this guy. With drivers who may or may not be too aggressive, I figured I would just pretend to go on the outside, but then let him slide past. That's exactly what happened. If I had tried to take an outside line, if I tried to pass him on the outside there, he would have driven directly into me, pushed me off track, and I kind of doubt that he would have given me the position back after pushing me off track. If you saw the radar before, you'll notice that ISO was actually incredibly close to us when I made that pass. I was worried that with those two both battling each other, or maybe even working together, they were going to be able to get to me before the Casio Triangle, and Casio Triangle is always really, really scary in public lobbies. I was worried if I stayed defensive, then one of them might hit me trying to pass the other, so I just kind of stayed in the middle, and I think I was holding my breath this entire time. Luckily, they took care of each other, and that actually gave me way more space. Now, you'd think that I could breathe a sigh of relief since I was in first place by the third lap. However, the reason that I was in this lobby, and this is what we call drop split, which is either the second split or it's the split where the people with the low sportsmanship rating go, is because partially this guy who I find myself behind again decided that he was going to block and ram me in a previous race, which completely destroyed my sportsmanship rating. So I was pretty worried, especially as he was starting to weave back and forth, so I didn't even try to pass him. I was just going to let him do his thing, and I was very happy to see him go in the pits there. I had 4 seconds over one clever name, and I had the fastest lap, so I wasn't too worried, and that was actually pretty much the end of it. I was able to actually add 10 more seconds to the gap between myself and one clever name. After starting in 13th place, this was actually the start of a really fantastic day of this race. I ended up having a lot of good luck, so let's see some more of that. I recorded the last one while I was streaming, but I was able to save this replay so we get to use this super cool view now. If you ever see someone swerve really sharply at the start of a race, it usually means there's a stopped car. Luckily, I was able to see that in time. Wicked moved in on me a little bit, but I think it's just because he didn't see me, and so no harm, no foul. Once again, we cut to the inside, and that was definitely the right choice. Lots of people making contact. We were able to check up behind Speed Racer, and I was lucky that no one else behind me hit me. Speed Racer got a little loose. I was able to sneak on the inside, and then I don't think he was trying to do anything. He was just trying to survive at that point, but he did bounce off me and fly off the track, unfortunately. How you feel about foreshadowing, but the guy in front of Chesnick's name is Shadow Realm. I felt pretty confident with a run on Chesnick to pass before Degner, but then when I saw Shadow Realm, I figured I should check up. And luckily, I did just in time. That guy ghosted, though you can't see it in the replay, and we were able to get right past Shadow Realm, which is actually kind of a scary person to be in front of, leading to a hairpin. But we made it through cleanly. And just like that, by the hairpin, we're in second place, behind someone that I absolutely trust. It should come as a surprise to absolutely no one, but the cleanest person that I've encountered on track so far today was also the fastest person. I was very surprised, however, to see him go into the pits on lap 4. He was on softs, I was on mediums, but I was already setting the fastest lap, so I figured I could actually make an overcut work. So the next lap was just about me going as fast as I possibly could. I was a little bit behind him, but I was also pretty confident in my pace. I wasn't sure if he'd lost any time, so I was kind of holding my breath here. And if you take a look at the radar, it was very, very close. I was just barely able to maintain my position and make the overcut work. Now, you may remember from the last race, the guy directly in front of me was also the guy who's responsible for me being in this split. And honestly, this split hasn't been too bad, but I was worried that he might cause even more chaos and I'd be dropped down to an even lower sportsmanship split. And then seeing his front tire lock up through that entire sector did not make me feel any better. What had actually happened between us is coming out of Spoon, I had a big run on him and I was going to try to pass him, but he waited until just about the time I was about to get to him and then moved directly in front of me, so I couldn't avoid him and I ran right into the back of him. I was still able to pass him using the boost, and as I moved past him, he started bumping me, so I just put him in the grass. I wasn't going to deal with that. I didn't want to have to deal with that going into Casio as well. Last time I had a 4-second gap to the people behind me. This time I didn't have that luxury. Blu-ray was directly behind me, so I figured why not? Maybe he doesn't want to try to kill me this time, so I just went for it. I was definitely a little bit worried, but he didn't try to do anything. Either he learned his lesson or he didn't mean to be as crazy the first time around. Either way, he's on my good list now. I knew Chesnick was also in front of us just because of the differing pit strategies, so we'll go ahead and just jump to the end. A big shout out to Blu-ray for keeping it clean, and yeah, I was able to put a pretty good gap between myself and everyone else, and that was the third of 6 really good races this day. You may wonder what happened in the thumbnail, and you're about to find out. I very much respect not using traction control to start off, but it is very challenging. I got really lucky too. People just kind of bounced away from me, and the people who had checked up, I was able to get directly in front of them. Once again, I took an inside line, and I tried to stay safe. I was able to get in front of Alistair, and we made it to 5th place, 9 positions by the end of T2. The guy directly behind me is another streamer, Adam Carnage, and I was really happy to see that he made it through as well. We both made it up about 8 or 9 positions right at the beginning, and so maybe you can call it streamer luck. As we have learned from all the races so far, Degner provides craziness every single time without fail, and this was no exception. I even almost went directly off, but luckily I was able to get just enough grip to make it past TN. Remember that I mentioned that I was surprised that no one had gone off on the hairpin? Well, you may have noticed that I've been using 3rd gear to exit that corner. It's really easy to burn the tires with this car. It has so much power, it weighs almost nothing, and you're just going to waste time and waste your tires if you use anything but 3rd gear coming out of there. I like to put myself in a position and just have a look on the inside, even if I don't have any kind of overlap, and I always brake in time to make sure that I don't run into people if they do take their line. Brando rightfully took his line, and of course I didn't hit him because I had planned on that, so it was just kind of a maneuver that I like to use to slow people down or keep them guessing. This was a pretty scary situation, and Brando almost lost it there, but luckily for him, he caught it. And even more luckily for me, I got his position. I was able to make it cleanly through the triangle, and now just 1 lap in, actually less than a lap in, I'm in 2nd place. Isratox is another person that I had grown to trust, so I knew that I could safely just make this overtake here, and hopefully I'd be able to defend against him. And if I did, I realized I had a very unique opportunity. Since I made it to 1st place so quickly, I realized that I had 3/4 of my overtake left. What I planned on doing was take an extra lap on my medium stint. That way the car would weigh less for my soft stint, and I'd have a lighter car and sticky tires. So what I did was I held the overtake button on almost every single straight. And I realized afterwards I was being too conservative with it, but my fastest lap up to this point had been a 35 flat, and I had done something similar. I was using a lot of the overtake on that lap, but not pretty much the entire thing. This time I wanted to make sure every time I was on the straight, I was holding the overtake button down the entire time. At this point, I was 1.2 seconds ahead of a 37.3 lap, and I didn't remember how good the last sector of my fastest lap was, so I wasn't really confident that I was actually going to be able to beat my in-race record. My time trial time was a 33.5, and I was certain I could do better than that. I was also certain that I could do better than 35 flat using the sticky tires, light fuel, and a lot of the overtake button, but it didn't really look like I was going to get a 34 on this one, at least not yet. Now, leaving that sector, I was a little bit deflated because if you do the math, I was barely going to be in the low 35s. Definitely not a 34. And so I must have actually really messed up the final sector on my previous fastest lap. I might have been battling or overtaking or something, but I was very happy to see what my time was when I crossed the finish line. After beating my own fastest lap by 3 seconds, and there only being 2 laps left, it was a pretty clean victory. I ended up doing 2 more races and winning both of them this day, but this is probably my favorite of the day. I mentioned how tough it is to start without traction control, and my boy Buckle really showed us how hard it was, but I'm just glad I was there to save him from spinning off into the grass. Like always, we're going to try to make it to the inside because people are usually just going to follow the momentum and slide off, but I hit Prow. I felt really bad about that. I could have passed him here, but considering that I caused him to potentially lose speed, I decided to stay behind. I really hope I'm not the reason that he went into those other 2 people and pushed them off track too. And thinking that I might be, I decided to just not be too aggressive with Prow in general. I absolutely hate running into people. 1, because I should be able to avoid it, even if there are different paces, but 2, it's just the worst. So I did whatever I could to avoid Prow, which almost led to me driving off the track. If you ever put 2 tires in the dirt there, you know it's really difficult to stay on the track. So I was really scared there. I was glad to stay on track, and then of course, bam, directly into D. Michael. D. Michael is a friend of mine. You may know him as Rush. Looking at my rear view, I saw my boy Buckle, and so I just decided to take the outside line because I know that if he is going to go for a move, he's going to at least leave me space so it'll be fair on the exit, and we did okay. I don't know if you noticed, but D. Michael just passed 2 people with 2 tires in the dirt, which was fantastic. With Prow, I decided to go on the inside, and unfortunately, he tried a little too hard to defend and went directly off the track. Another potentially scary moment's coming up. I'm trying to get D. Michael's slip, and of course, buddies always give each other slip when it comes to racing together. And so I've got the slip, I'm going faster, and Wicked tries to go in front of me right at the last second, which causes me to hit him. All I did was stay on the throttle, and he chose to move directly at the last second, but luckily it didn't make him crash, didn't make me crash, so we're all good. At this point, I definitely should have just started a counter for how many times I hit my friends. I hit D. Michael, I hit Rush so many times in this race, I felt bad, but luckily none of them ruined our race. It was about this time that I was promising for like the 10th time that I wasn't going to try to pass D. Michael, and of course I did. I tried to pass him. Luckily I messed it up entirely, and even more luckily he didn't trust me through there, so he was able to make the old switcheroo happen, and he took his position back. At this point I decided I wasn't going to be an aggressive jerk. Despite the fact that I've been promising him since the beginning of the race, I really was deciding not to be an aggressive jerk this time. I did also promise him that if I were to include this race in my video, that I would mention how many times I hit him, and I think it's very clear that obviously the cumulative hits that I put onto his backside culminated in this. I'm going to go ahead and take full responsibility for that. Spazua also was a victim of Degner too, and so with that, I'm up into 4th place. It wasn't until a full lap later that we were able to catch up to TN, Marulanda, and Ross. Well, at least we caught up to Marulanda. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but he made a big enough mistake that I was able to pass him coming out of Spoon. TN00 was in my sights, and I actually hadn't raced him before today. I'd raced him in a few of the races earlier, and I wasn't really able to see what his pace was like because I'm pretty sure I got ahead of him because of incidents and stuff like that. Now that things had calmed down, I was able to look ahead and look for Ross, and Ross had a massive lead on all of us. And I knew that I'd raced Ross before. I couldn't remember anything about him, and I apologize, Ross, because obviously I remember you now. Ross had actually been to my stream, but at this point, I couldn't remember exactly who he was at all. I also didn't really have any indication of his pace. I knew that Marulanda had the fastest lap before I took it just there, so there was a good chance that Ross was also on the medium tires, but he could have also been on the softs and gotten caught up with traffic or defending, or maybe wasn't even that fast, but I really didn't know. I didn't want to count on him not having pace, so I was going to continue pushing and try to get past TN00 as fast as I could. The two Degners make it really difficult to stay consistent on this track. I was a victim of those corners multiple times in the earlier races and in races that I've done since then. Unless you're on really worn tires, as long as you do it perfectly correct, you can go full throttle through Degner 1 and then just have to worry about braking at Degner 2. A lot of people who aren't quite as confident end up braking before Degner 1, and that actually causes a lot of accidents, and that's one of the reasons that my SR was so low at this point. With Ross being the one last obstacle between me and another victory, it would be the 5th victory in a row, I started looking for him in the horizon, and once I came out of Spoon, I realized I couldn't see him at all. So here at 130R, there's just a brief speck of Ross. That brief speck of Ross ended up being exactly what I would use to gauge whether or not I was catching up to him or not. Obviously, I could see the delta between us in the actual race. We don't have that luxury here, but seeing him go for mediums on lap 4 made me think that maybe another overcut could work. So let's jump forward. Having set another fastest lap, a half second faster, I was feeling pretty confident, but hearing him pass as the car was going up in the air to get the tires switched out, I realized that I had a lot of work to do. Now, since we can't see the delta like I said earlier, gauging how far away he is by coming out of Spoon and looking down at 130R is the only thing we can do right now. So as we go over that hill and we see, he's just barely there, slightly closer, so I know I'm gaining on him. I also see that he set a new fastest lap, but I was feeling pretty good because it was only 0.3 faster than my medium lap. I didn't know if that was actually his raw pace or not, but I was also feeling good because I was 0.8 faster than that. Jumping ahead once more, I was really just keeping my head down, trying to focus on going as fast as I could, but then we got to Degner and I realized I was close enough to see him exiting Degner 2 when I was entering Degner 1. I also still couldn't remember who he was. I really couldn't remember if he was someone that I battled in the past, someone that I knew from a previous race or something like that, but I did know that he was fast and my work was going to be cut out for me. You've heard me mention a lot in this video that I'm curious if he's someone that I know or not, and the real reason that that's important is because people you don't know if they're going to be clean with you, or if they're going to be deliberately dirty, or if they're going to be maybe very aggressive when defending, or even if they're going to be the kind of people who try to exploit the penalty system in their favor, because there are lots of that kind of people on Gran Turismo 7, unfortunately. Either way, we kept pushing forward. Now, he was just close enough for me to see him exiting Degner 2 when I was entering Degner 1, but he disappeared for a second after 130R, so he was definitely pushing, and he had great pace. I still had all of the fastest laps from lap 2 on, but that still doesn't mean much when you only have 2 laps left and the guy is still barely in view. I had not considered my tires whatsoever, but I wasn't exactly brutal on them. I did, however, remember that he went into the pits 1 lap earlier than I did, and so I thought that I would have the tire advantage if I was to catch him. So I just kept pushing on, and it seemed like we weren't getting that much closer until I saw him entering Dunlop while I was exiting the S's. At this point, I was hoping that I was going to be able to catch up to him by the hairpin, get a really good exit, and then through Spoon, get Slipstream. Just get close enough within 1 second of him so that I would have the added benefit of less air resistance while I was chasing him. It was about now that I realized I was definitely going to be close enough to him to be able to get that Slipstream. I still had a lot of overtake, in fact more than I really needed at this point, but I wanted to be conservative with it because he also could have been saving it. He didn't really have to battle anyone this entire race, so there's a good chance that he had even a full tank of that overtake left. I was already really impressed with his pace, but I could hardly believe that despite the fact that I was in his slipstream for so long, I wasn't able to catch up to him yet. I wasn't about to use more of that overtake because it's less effective at speed. Like I said before, it's really effective coming out of slower speed corners, but I thought that I had really good pace and I was still not catching him. Watching his lines, it was clear he wasn't making any big mistakes or anything like that, so I was just going to have to go as fast as I possibly could. He immediately took a defensive line here, which is the smart move to do, and I hit a lap that was almost as fast as my fastest lap. I was well within the 35s for my entire soft stint so far. This is one of those times where I thought I should potentially have one of those heart rate monitors for my stream. I was chasing this man for 7 or 8 laps. I was within a second of him. I was well within his slipstream, and with this much of the first lap already gone, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to catch him, and he made a tiny mistake there on the corner before Dunlop. Now, the closer you get to someone, the stronger the effect of the slipstream is. Unfortunately, that also means the stronger the effect of the dirty air is, so you've got to be really clean. And right here, I knew that if I could make a clean move happen, I'd be able to have him. The hard part about taking a defensive line is changing your braking point, and he went a little wide, giving me space to sneak right in. However, he got a fantastic exit anyways, and I'm not sure if he was using his overtake, but I was completely out of overtake at that point. I had no choice but to try to stay on the inside, and right as we entered, he went a little wide, so I took the full width of the track and tried to get as good of an exit as I possibly could. You can see in my rearview mirrors that he made a little bit of a mistake trying to get back on track, but even at that distance, by the time we got to the Casio triangle after the 130R right here, he'd be close enough that he could potentially put on a move, so I took my defensive line, then went to the middle, giving him enough space on the outside, and fortunately I was able to solidify the win right then and there. Just a couple corners before the end. Fantastic race, Ross. Really good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and if you like this particular kind of content, please let me know down in the comments. I haven't done anything like this before, and I actually really enjoyed it. I'm going to be doing these races anyways, so if you like it, let me know. Thank you. I'll see you next time.